Welcome back to the Godly Impact Podcast. Now, if you are not new around here, you might be going, wait, what happened to the Life's K3 podcast? Same podcast, different name, same agenda, same purpose. And that is that I want to help you take your good intentions, take your immeasurable, eternal, and irreplaceable impact and make it for good. Because here's the truth. You are going to have an immeasurable, eternal, and irreplaceable impact. It's not a matter of if, it's just going to be a matter of what kind. And I want that kind to be godly impact. So I felt like a rebrand was necessary because even though I tried to explain what Life's Key 3 are, which are to become spiritually strong, emotionally healthy, and relationally smart, that could just take a little bit too much explanation. And so a title of Godly Impact, I think gets more to the objective quicker. So today we are launching a brand new series called It's All in Your Head. And this is powerful information that truly can transform your life. Whether you need a little bit of transformation in one area or maybe you need an entire overhaul in your life, this is going to be relevant information for you. And if you happen to be raising kids, this is also really good information because it's something that you can not only put into practice in your own life, but you can be intentional about talking to your kids about, even when from a very young age. And it's something that they can then grow up listening to and learning to become self-aware, specifically about what are the stories I'm telling myself. And you may be saying, I don't tell myself stories. Oh, yes, you do. We all do. We tell ourselves stories dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands of times a day. And the reason it's important that we pay attention to what the stories are that we are telling ourselves is because our stories become our beliefs. Beliefs become actions. Actions become our nature, kind of who we are. And then our nature becomes our impact. So every day you're going to tell yourself a lot of different stories. A lot of these are going to be micro stories and others may be novel-length stories. Probably not as long as like War and Peace, but some of our stories actually have a whole lot to do with war and peace in our lives. And I want you to, if you want something to change in your life, you're going to have to change your story. But if you're going to rewrite a story, you first have to read the one that's already there. So let's start with something easy. Let's say, for example, the micro story that happens when you're driving an automobile and somebody cuts in front of you. You immediately tell yourself a story. And like all good stories, there's a hero and a villain. Your story might go like this. Jerk, that person shouldn't be allowed to drive. And in this story, you're the hero and jerk driver is the villain. And as a hero, you might decide not to take any retaliatory action. Because, that's beneath you. And so you just put a mental sticker on your good behavior chart. Or you might decide that it's the hero's job to teach the villain a lesson. So you start tailgating. Yeah, well, let him see what that feels like. Or you move over into the next lane, speed up, and then cut over in front of jerk driver. Well, serves him right. Give him a taste of his own medicine. And this whole story might play out in seconds or minutes. Or you may tell yourself an entirely different story when a driver cuts you off. And it might go something like this. Oh, I bet she didn't see me. I'm glad I was able to slow down and not run into her. That whole story might come and go so quickly. It might just be a matter of seconds. It might not even register with you beyond that momentary time that it is in your brain, but it makes a difference. Now, in this story, the villain isn't you, and it's not the driver who cut you off. The villain is a blind spot. It's a bad rearview mirror in the other person's car. It's something circumstantial. It's not tied to either one of you as a people. And the hero is also neither one of you. It might be fate, chance, God's protection, depending on your spiritual beliefs. And so your response options in this story aren't likely to be, I'm going to start tailgating or speeding up and cutting over in front of this person. Instead, you just quickly refocus on something else. You absorb the event, but you don't become fixated on it. You may even breathe a prayer of gratitude. And unlike the jerk driver, you're not still stewing over, blind spot lady 3 hours later. These stories really do matter because you see, every time you tell yourself a story, you create a groove in your mind. And the next time that you are in traffic, your brain is more likely to return to that groove and make the same decision, jerk or blind spot. And you make that decision enough times and the groove eventually becomes a rut. Now, ruts are great for ditches, okay? And ditches make great rainwater drains, but they don't work well for roads. I mean, we don't want to be driving in a ditch. We want to be driving maybe alongside of a ditch. Hopefully that will be catching, rainwater or whatever, but we don't want to be running in a ditch. But that's what can happen with our thoughts. Now, we tell ourselves all these micro stories all the time. It might be about drivers, the clerk at the store, a colleague, a neighbor, a family member, the neighbor's kid. I mean, anyone at all. We are constantly telling ourselves these stories. And the more that you tell yourself jerk stories, the more you're going to begin to see jerks everywhere. But conversely, the more that you tell yourself generous stories, that person just didn't see me, kind of the blind spot stories, the more you're going to have a perspective that you're going to see people who are just doing their best, but sometimes unintentionally make life hard for you. I mean, they make mistakes. Your stories shape your beliefs about yourself and others. And if you position yourself as the hero in your story enough times, whether it's at home or work, on the road, in your community, eventually you're going to become more and more heroic in your eyes, and others are going to become smaller. And you will pay for positioning yourself as a hero with the currency of humility, because humility and growth have an inverse relationship. You're never going to find a mature person who isn't also humble, not fake humble, but truly humble. You're not going to have growth if you don't have humility. The Bible is filled with examples of people whose stories caused missed opportunities, wasted time, and ruined relationship. And this is why the stories that we tell ourselves matter so much, because this is what's at stake. It's our nature, it's our impact, it's opportunities, it's time, and it's relationships. One example is King Saul. Now, after Saul had been king and he goes out to war and David comes up and David is serving in his army, they go out to war, and David comes back one time from this military campaign, and some of the women begin singing a song, and they are referencing, Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s. Okay. Probably, there's a lesson in that we're not going to dive into today, but there's a lesson in terms of thinking about the impact of the things that we say. Probably not the smartest thing to be singing, especially when the king could hear it. But even though the women that were singing this song weren't using a lot of good judgment, that doesn't excuse King Saul and the decision that he makes. Because what happens is when Saul hears that, he becomes jealous and he tells himself a story. And this story is very quick, but it goes basically where it says, hey, David is a threat to my position as king. He's not an asset to this kingdom. He's a threat to me and to my reign. That simple, quick story that came out of this incident grew into a consuming narrative that caused Saul to waste years of his life chasing after an enemy that didn't even exist. The facts proved over and over and over again that David was not a threat to him, never a threat to him. In fact, it was the entire opposite. David was a loyal, devoted servant. He was also a devoted son-in-law. He never did anything to give Saul reason to think that he was a threat to Saul's reign. But you see, Saul was so emotionally attached to his story. He was so insecure that he couldn't even accurately interpret the facts. And that's the danger that is still at work with us today. We can waste so much time. We can miss opportunities. We can so miss what's actually factually true that we end up expending so much of our lives on things that don't matter and that in fact pull us away from our true calling and what we ought to be doing with our lives. You know, we can believe with everything in us that the facts support our story. But the truth is that we are vulnerable as people to deception. Vulnerable. I don't think I said that right. I kind of meshed that up. Vulnerable. Okay. Vulnerable to deception. And we can become blinded to the facts that are evident to any objective person. We do this all the time at great peril to us and to others as well. I want you to do something this week. I want you to start really paying attention to the stories that you're telling yourself. And start with those micro stories, you know, the ones that might only take seconds from beginning to end. And you may even begin keeping a journal or just jotting those down on index cards or recording a voice memo on your phone or something. And then get curious about your stories. Don't try to filter out the negative ones and hide from those. I mean, just bring them into the light to see them for what they are. What are the stories that you are telling yourself? And at first, you know, you might be kind of scared. You might be going, wow, I have a lot of negative stories, or I've got a lot of pretty judgmental stories here. Again, bring those into the light. Don't try to shame your stories back into hiding, because you can't change what you're not willing to see. Now, you might also find that your stories are much more positive than you knew. Well, that's awesome. To live with godly impact doesn't just mean getting rid of destructive traits and habits. It also means that we protect and preserve the habits that we have in our lives that are life-giving. You know, maturity and growth never hit a plateau and then we just coast through life. Wish that were the case, but it's not. So we want to be mindful of the good traits and the habits that we need to protect, that need our attention and our preservation as well. So really begin paying attention to the stories that you tell yourselves, even those micro stories, because your stories become your beliefs. And your beliefs become your actions, and your actions become your nature, and your nature will become your impact. So if you want your immeasurable, eternal, and irreplaceable impact to be godly, you've got to begin with the stories you're telling yourself. All right, my friend, that is going to wrap us up for today. I invite you to share this podcast with a friend. Hey, subscribe if you haven't already done that. And also be back next week as we continue this series. It's all in your head.